A golden card, a $5 million price tag, and a name that kept showing up behind every closed-door deal, Jasmine Crockett. What started as a collectible turned out to be a key, unlocking hidden meetings, backroom favors, and silent policy shifts. Until one congresswoman stood up and asked the question no one dared to say out loud. Mr. Trump, how much did you profit from selling access to democracy? The silence that followed was louder than any applause. It began with a broadcast. Golden light flooded the stage. American flags hung in perfect symmetry behind a polished glass podium. A gospel version of God Bless the USA played softly in the background as cameras adjusted their focus. Then he stepped out. Donald J. Trump, in his signature blue suit and crimson tie, walked onto the stage at Mar-a-Lago with a theatrical pause. His smile was wide, controlled. His hands did that familiar flutter, half wave, half dominance gesture, but it wasn't a rally this time. No angry crowd, no chants of lock her up. This was something different. He leaned into the mic and grinned. Today, I'm introducing something truly historic, the most patriotic, exclusive collector's item in American history. Behind him, a large screen flickered to life. A single image appeared. The Trump gold card. Shaped like a credit card. Engraved with Trump's face in profile, hair sculpted like marble, chin lifted like a Roman emperor. It shimmered with actual 24-karat gold foil. And at the bottom, stamped in bold serif font. Freedom has a price. The crowd, mostly donors and loyalists, clapped politely. Trump continued. We are only issuing 10 of these. Just 10, $5 million each, limited edition, hand-signed, and trust me, these aren't just cards. They are investments in the future of America. Cameras clicked. The live feed climbed past 60,000 viewers in minutes. Watching from her office in D.C., Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. Her phone was buzzing with text chains from other Hill staffers. Someone dropped a GIF of Trump Photoshop onto a Monopoly man. Another wrote, "Is this real? 5 million?" Jasmine didn't smile. She hit pause, stared at the still frame of Trump grinning beside the gold card, and whispered to no one in particular. Who the hell would buy that? Later that night, she pulled the press kit. There it was, tucked inside a slick, pseudo-patriotic landing page. Your Trump gold card grants you lifetime access to private events, early investment briefings, and limited advisory circles. No mention of campaign donation limits. No FEC disclosure footnotes. Just vague language like inner circle briefings and accelerated civic influence. A gut feeling twisted in Jasmine's stomach. She knew what this was. Not a collector's item. A paywall for power. 2 days later, Politico ran a headline. Billionaire mining executive secures Trump gold card number 003. The article was brief but telling. The buyer, a known lobbyist in the fossil fuel sector, had recently failed to secure permits in federal land grants. No connection to the card was implied, but the subtext was clear. Meanwhile, Trump's campaign store started selling mini replicas of the gold card for $99 each. Gold embossed, plastic, branded, collector patriot certified. It was a masterstroke. To the rich, it was influence. To the poor, it was fandom. And no one was questioning it. Except Jasmine. She brought it up on the House floor, casual at first. Mr. Speaker, is the value of patriotism now listed on the Commodities Exchange? Just checking, because I heard it's currently priced at $5 million a pop. The room chuckled, nervous laughter. But she wasn't joking. Her team started digging, quietly, discreetly, connecting dots no one was drawing. They called it Project Ledger. And the deeper they looked, the clearer it became. The Trump gold card wasn't a symbol of America. It was a backdoor. A currency. And someone was using it to purchase something far more dangerous than influence. Access. The email came without a subject line. Sent from a burner address with a single attachment. It landed in Jasmine Crockett's encrypted inbox at 2:31 a.m. Most messages that arrived at that hour were threats or noise. But this one was different. The body read only, "If you read this out loud, say my name wrong. Don't let them track my prints. D." Jasmine stared at the attachment. A PDF. 19 pages. Internal communications from an organization labeled TPA Holdings, a shell company quietly tied to the Trump organization through a maze of LLCs, PO boxes, and offshore intermediaries. But what caught her eye wasn't the paperwork. It was the subject line of the internal email chain. Gold card holders, priority tiers and access protocol. She opened it. Page after page outlined a stratified system, tiers of influence, coded in colors, linked to the serial number of each Trump Gold card issued. Each cardholder was tagged with a civic clearance level, ranging from Tier 3 preferred donor access to Tier 1 candidate alignment strategy, which included early briefings on proposed deregulation initiatives, invitations to restricted roundtables hosted off record, access to private equity investment pitches pre-aligned with potential federal subsidies. And then, the final tier, marked Gold Alpha, linked only to card number 001. Owner, redacted. Benefit, direct strategic influence. Notes, exempt from disclosure protocols. Flag only via internal counsel. Avoid digital trail. Jasmine leaned back in her chair. This wasn't just unethical. It was infrastructure. She met with her aide, Malik, the next morning. He was already at the cafe, sipping black coffee, earbuds still in, eyes darting toward the street. "You read the drop?" she asked, sliding into the booth. Malik nodded. "If this is real, and I think it is, they've built a private political economy. The card's not symbolic, it's functional, a passcode into something we're not supposed to see." Jasmine tapped the table. "Then I want to see all of it." Malik hesitated, then slid a photo across the table. Printed, no digital footprint. It was a man in his 40s. Black baseball cap, dark stubble, standing outside a gated compound in Florida. The caption underneath: Daniel Reiter, former regional director of campaign finance ops, Trump 2020. He's off the radar, fired in 2022. Said to have turned against the machine. Is he talking? He will. They met 2 days later in a motel room in Flagler Beach. Jasmine came alone, no staff, no press, just a recorder hidden in her purse and a notepad in her coat pocket. Reiter looked nervous, paranoid even, but he spoke fast, like a man who had rehearsed the moment for years. The gold card was never about fundraising. It's about filtering loyalty, buy-in. Literally, if you can pay $5 million for a card, you're not buying memorabilia, you're buying a seat in the next regime. Jasmine said nothing, just let him talk. There's a room, Mar-a-Lago, basement level, no cameras. The strategy chamber, that's what they call it. Cardholders meet there quarterly. They get classified policy drafts weeks before the public ever sees them. Who's in the room? Reiter smiled bitterly. Anyone who paid, and no one who voted. Back in D.C., Jasmine's team cross-checked names, companies, event logs. A dozen red flags popped up. A shipping magnate from Georgia had received preferential contracts after acquiring card #007. A pharmaceutical CEO tied to card number 006 got fast-tracked FDA approval for a controversial product. A foreign real estate investor, originally denied a U.S. visa, miraculously reappeared as a political contributor through a joint firm listed as owning card number 009. The deeper they went, the uglier it got. And the more they realized, the card wasn't gold. It was a key. Jasmine called a closed-door strategy session with 3 other members of Congress. 2 Democrats, 1 Republican. She laid out the files, the flowcharts, the access tiers, the names. No one spoke for a long minute. Then the Republican, an old-school fiscal conservative from Ohio, said quietly, "Jesus Christ, this isn't just a grift. This is a shadow government." Jasmine didn't blink. And it's time we turned on the lights. The thing about money is, it always leaves a trail. Jasmine Crockett knew that better than most. Before politics, she was a civil rights attorney who had chased corrupt developers, shadow donors, and fraudulent PACs across state lines. But this was different. This was federal, international, engineered for invisibility. Still, even ghosts make footprints when they move fast enough. Her team launched a forensic analysis, quietly partnering with a non-profit financial transparency lab in California. They used shell company mapping tools, blockchain tracking, and old-fashioned deep reading of SEC filings. What they found made even Malik, her usually calm legislative director, go silent. There were at least 4 primary offshore accounts tied directly to the Trump Gold Card transaction system. 1. Cyprus, routed through a private wealth custodian connected to Eastern European oligarchs. 2. Dubai, filtered via a luxury asset broker who had previously been sanctioned for violating campaign donation limits. 3. Zurich, masked as philanthropic transfers to an art foundation. 4. Delaware, a domestic pass-through linked to a firm called Heritage Restoration Holdings, whose listed business purpose was patriotic commemorative asset management. In plain terms, they were washing the gold. Jasmine stared at the charts on the screen, red lines snaking across the globe, each one connecting the so-called collector's card to something bigger. Asterisk weapons manufacturers. Asterisk land speculation trusts in South Dakota. Asterisk a media conglomerate accused of running disinformation campaigns in swing states. And every single one had a common phrase in their quarterly reports: strategic alignment with Trump future leadership initiatives. It was buried in footnotes, bundled in vague language, but the implication was terrifying. The cards weren't memorabilia. They were equity stakes. At a finance subcommittee hearing 2 weeks later, Jasmine took the floor. She didn't name Trump. She didn't mention the card. Instead, she simply asked, "At what point does a symbolic asset become a backdoor to political ownership?" The room stirred. If I buy a gold card and, a month later, my company gets federal approval, is that coincidence? Is that patriotism? Or is that a pipeline? The chairman tried to cut her off. She stared him down. "We track campaign dollars. Why don't we track symbolic wealth instruments?" There was no answer. Just eyes looking away. Back at her office, a courier envelope was waiting on her desk. No return address. Inside, a photo of Jasmine exiting the committee room. Scrawled across it, in red ink: "Stop digging, we see you." Malik froze. "Do we report this?" Jasmine slipped the photo into a drawer. "Not yet. Let them watch. Let them know I'm not blinking." That night, she went live. Just her, the camera, and the truth. To every American who ever felt like politics was rigged, "You're not crazy. You're not paranoid. You're not wrong." She held up a blurred copy of a transaction record. This is not fiction. This is a receipt. For silence. For access. For loyalty. And the cost? $5 million. Within hours, the livestream hit 2 million views. Within 2 days, she got a subpoena. Not against her, but from her. She filed it under emergency congressional authority. Request for financial disclosure, asset origin and political influence inquiry, Trump Gold Card system. The media started circling. Late-night hosts made jokes. But the message had landed. The money had moved, now it was time for the people to follow. The chamber was full before 9 a.m. Reporters packed the aisles with cameras slung across shoulders. Congressional aides whispered in corners. C-SPAN had already set up a live feed, titled "Emergency Hearing on Political Symbolic Assets and Financial Disclosure." But everyone knew what this really was. The Trump card hearing. At 9:31 a.m., former President Donald J. Trump entered the room with a confident half-wave. Flanked by his legal team. He didn't wear a tie, just a dark navy suit, gold cufflinks, and a small pin that read number 001, a replica of the gold card. He smirked. Across the room, Jasmine Crockett sat straight-backed in her chair, wearing a charcoal blouse and black blazer, no makeup but fire in her eyes. Her staff called it the storm posture. It only showed up when she was about to land a blow no one saw coming. The chairman opened with boilerplate language. This is not a political trial. This is a transparency proceeding related to emerging symbolic financial instruments and potential influence over government policy. Then came witness introductions. Then, silence. Until Jasmine pressed her mic. Mr. Trump, thank you for appearing voluntarily. He leaned back, smug. I always volunteer to defend America. She didn't respond, just clicked her pen. Can you tell us how many gold cards have been sold to date? Trump shrugged. Limited edition, very special, very valuable, a few, maybe. 10 were produced, all sold within 90 days of launch, each for $5 million. Trump raised an eyebrow. That's called demand. It's what happens when something's worth something. Worth what? Exactly, Jasmine pressed. Because from what I can tell, buyers didn't just get gold, they got access. Trump smirked. You call that access, I call that loyalty. A ripple moved through the room. Jasmine leaned in. So you admit these weren't symbolic, but functional? Trump waved her off. I admit Americans love me, and if they want to invest in the movement, who am I to stop them? Was the movement offered as a benefit in writing? She asked. It was patriotism, he replied, not a transaction. Then explain why cardholder number 006, CEO of Protect Pharma, received expedited FDA clearance for a product that failed phase 2 trials within weeks of acquiring a card. Trump paused. I don't run the FDA. Jasmine flipped a page. You do, however, host private dinners for cardholders. Here's a seating chart. Here's the policy memo presented that night. He shifted. So did the mood in the room. Let me ask you plainly, Mr. Trump, Jasmine said, how much have you personally profited from the gold card program? Trump scoffed. Is this an investigation or a jealousy contest? You don't like success, Congresswoman. She didn't blink. I don't like fraud. She held up a document. 12 separate wire transfers, $5 million each, 3 routed through offshore proxies. Total sum, $102 million. All connected to entities later granted government contracts, policy shifts, or meetings within your circle. She turned to the committee. Ladies and gentlemen, this isn't memorabilia, this is privatized policy, bought, stamped, delivered. Trump's attorney objected, called it narrative theater. The chairman let it stand. Jasmine continued. The Constitution never said influence should be affordable only to the ultra-rich. It never said access was a premium service. But this card, this golden symbol, it didn't unlock patriotism. It unlocked preference. Trump leaned in. You done grandstanding? Not yet, Jasmine answered. She pulled up the final image. This is the contract template offered to cardholders in Tier 1. Under NDA, it includes, verbatim, early access to policy roadmaps and market-aligned advisory briefings. Trump shifted again. A stillness swept over the room. Crockett let the silence stretch. Then she spoke, quiet but cutting. You didn't sell gold, you sold government. The session adjourned in chaos. Reporters flooded the hallway, commentators screamed across networks, threads exploded online. But Jasmine didn't stay to watch the reaction. She walked straight out the side entrance, ducked into a black sedan, and said 5 words. Get me the next witness. The hearing didn't just trend. It detonated. By midnight, Jasmine Crockett's cross-examination had hit 11.2 million views across YouTube, TikTok, and X. Clips of her saying, "You didn't sell gold, you sold government," became rallying cries. Cable news anchors used it to open primetime shows. Editorial boards called it the first real firewall against billionaire politics. And by sunrise, the counterstrike had already begun. At 6:41 a.m., Trump's campaign released a statement. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett has fabricated a political stunt out of nothing. Her accusations are unfounded, unproven, and un-American. We are reviewing legal action. Minutes later, hashtags began to trend. Hashtag Crockett conspiracy. Hashtag Deep State Diva. Hashtag Radical Plant. A viral video spread on conservative channels showing Jasmine, heavily edited, seemingly saying, "Access is power, and we should control it," a chopped, misleading version of a quote from a town hall 5 years ago. The clip was reposted by influencers with millions of followers, many with direct ties to Trump's media ecosystem. Fox News ran the chyron. Congresswoman Crockett, justice warrior or woke tyrant? Inside her office, Jasmine's phone buzzed non-stop. Threats, praise, mockery, support. A voicemail came in. "You think you're brave? You just made yourself a target. You won't make it to the next hearing." Malik, pacing in her office, looked at her. "We need to escalate security. This isn't Twitter beef. This is coordinated." Jasmine didn't argue. She already knew. Then came the tip. An anonymous email. Subject line, memorabilia 88 inches. Inside was a Google Drive link and a single sentence. "If you want to know what the card really funds, follow this blueprint." Attached were internal files, hidden deep within metadata logs of Trump.org's collector product line. The files outlined something far more complex than a merchandise campaign. It was a financial network, engineered to bypass FEC reporting and donation limits. Each gold card wasn't just a transaction. It was a node, a trigger that activated encrypted political assets, routed donations through affiliated 501(c)(4) entities, and converted influence into non-financial political assets across multiple swing states. It wasn't just a pay-to-play scheme. It was a shadow infrastructure. Later that night, Jasmine met with a man in a parking garage. A former Trump finance staffer, code name, Harkness. His hands trembled as he passed her a hard drive. "It's all there," he whispered. "The emails, the meetings, the names." "Why now?" Jasmine asked. He looked away. "Because my daughter just asked me if democracy is something you buy, or something you protect." I didn't know what to tell her. Back in her apartment, Jasmine and Malik combed through the files. Emails between campaign strategists and private equity firms. Budget spreadsheets for PAC-backed media influencers. A confidential pitch deck titled Golden Strategy, Reclaiming the White House Through Distributed Asset Loyalty. Slides described voter mobilization through cardholder incentives, data harvesting via merchandise purchases, and political favors mapped by region. One slide had the words, "They fund, we control, no paper trail." Jasmine whispered to herself. They didn't build a campaign, they built a machine. Within 24 hours, she scheduled a second press conference. This time, it wasn't about questions. It was about receipts. She stood in front of the Capitol press pool with a manila folder in hand. No podium, no preamble. Just raw documentation. This is no longer about symbolism. This is about subversion. The gold card isn't merchandise. It's an operational node in a system designed to buy quiet influence, mobilize strategic disinformation, and sell the soul of American policy to the highest bidder. She held up a diagram showing the routes. Offshore, back channels, super PACs, digital proxies. If you still think this is just a gold-plated souvenir, then congratulations. You've bought the illusion they sold you. The backlash intensified. Her inbox tripled in hate mail. Fox News called her the face of socialist surveillance. A fringe senator suggested she should be investigated for her own political stunts. But support poured in, too. Veterans, professors, even a few disillusioned conservatives. A retired judge posted on X, "I disagree with Jasmine Crockett on 90% of things. But what she just uncovered should terrify every American who believes in clean democracy." She knew she wasn't safe. But she also knew she was right. Late that night, as thunder rolled outside her apartment, she stared at the flash drive glowing in the dim desk light. The machine was real. And she was going to tear it apart. Piece by golden piece. By the time the press finished digesting Jasmine Crockett's second bombshell briefing, the lines had already been drawn. Mainstream media framed it as a crisis of accountability. Progressives called it the clearest example yet of money hollowing out democracy. Conservative media dismissed it as digital paranoia dressed as patriotism. But the one thing no one could deny anymore: the card wasn't about gold. It was about access. 2 days after the press conference, Jasmine's office received an encrypted message. A single line of text. "You're not done. Check Virginia, small town, cold storage facility. Ask for Unit 88. Malik looked up from the screen, puzzled. Could be a trap. Jasmine shook her head. Could also be the last piece. They arrived under fake names, dressed like consultants. The facility manager hesitated but relented when he saw the authorization code attached to the note Jasmine had received. Unit 88 was at the far end of the warehouse. Inside, beneath layers of dust and insulation, was a heavy steel cabinet. They cracked the lock. Inside, 12 original Trump gold cards, the prototypes, each etched with a unique QR code on the back. Also inside, a ledger. Handwritten, ink fading. Each entry listed a serial number, a buyer, and a corresponding benefit. Example: card number 003, PD Holdings LLC. Benefit: pipeline approval, XP, permit, Montana sector. Card number 006, Proteca Pharma. Benefit: expedited FDA review, media response clearance. And then one line, underlined twice. Card number 001, undisclosed, absolute override access. Jasmine stared at it for a long time. There was no price next to it. Because card number 001 was never for sale. That night, she went live again. The stream opened on the 12 physical cards displayed on a table behind her. She didn't introduce herself. She didn't thank viewers for tuning in. She just began. "I want you to see what influence looks like when it's minted. When it's weighed like gold, but traded like silence. These aren't souvenirs. These are keys. To contracts. To policies. To decisions that shaped your cost of insulin. Your gas bill. Your clean water." She paused, then held up the ledger. This was never about memorabilia. It was about creating a class of individuals who could bypass democracy with a card. By morning, the phrase, "bypass democracy with a card," was trending nationwide. Even Elon Musk reposted a meme with the phrase, mocking it. But acknowledging it, in a strange way, it only made it go more viral. The DOJ quietly requested a meeting. The FEC issued a statement that non-financial political assets may require expanded disclosure under emergent legislation. And in coffee shops and classrooms and group chats across the country, people were asking, how long has this been happening? At a university town hall in Philadelphia, a student asked Jasmine a question. "Congresswoman, are you afraid of what comes next?" She smiled, not out of joy, but steel resolve. "I'm not afraid of what comes next. I'm afraid of what happens if we stay quiet. They built a system designed to thrive on silence. I'm here to make noise." She introduced legislation the next day. The Access Disclosure and Integrity Act, aka the Golden Firewall. It demanded mandatory reporting of any asset or product offered to donors above $1 in value. Real-time FEC visibility into non-cash campaign perks. Ban on symbolic assets that granted privileged access or policy influence. The bill didn't pass immediately, but it made the front page of every major newspaper in the country. And it forced one undeniable question into the public square. Where does influence end and bribery begin? That night, Jasmine received a letter. Not an email. A letter, handwritten, no return address. Inside was a single phrase. Card number 001 is still in play. No signature. No threat. Just a warning. Malik watched as she folded it carefully and slid it into a secure drawer. What do we do now? Jasmine looked out the window, where protesters were chanting both her name and against her name, where cable vans lined the street, where 2 security agents stood quietly by the elevator. She spoke softly. We finish it. It was just past dawn when Jasmine Crockett stood alone on the Capitol steps. The marble was cold under her feet. Her breath was visible in the February air. Reporters were still arriving, cameras still being set up, but she didn't wait for the mic check. She began speaking, not to the press, but to history. Every generation reaches a point where it must decide whether it governs itself, or gets sold back to the highest bidder. We are at that point now. 2 floors above, in a secure conference room, federal officials and members of the FEC were reviewing the final forensic audit of the Trump Gold Card program. The findings were staggering. At least $185 million moved through shadow entities under the guise of commemorative sales. 12 contracts fast-tracked by agencies with cardholders on internal advisory panels. A war room at Mar-a-Lago that facilitated quarterly policy previews exclusively for Tier 1 cardholders. The conclusion? The system operated as an unregulated alternate state. And at its center, one man, and one card that was never supposed to be found. Meanwhile, card number 001 remained missing. Rumors exploded online, conspiracy theories bloomed like weeds. The card unlocks access to federal servers. It grants legal immunity to whoever holds it. It was buried in Ivana Trump's casket. Jasmine didn't engage in the noise. She focused on the facts. And she knew what mattered more than the card itself, was what it represented. Congress convened a landmark hearing titled Power for Sale, Investigating Symbolic Asset Corruption and Executive Influence. Jasmine didn't testify this time. She sat in the front row, listening. The committee heard from former campaign staffers who confirmed private dinners with card-linked donors. An ex-FDA official who admitted pressure from influence clusters. A data scientist who mapped the alignment between gold card sales and targeted policy wins. But it was Daniel Reiter, the former campaign finance director, who said the words that would live far beyond that hearing. It wasn't a fundraiser, it was a firewall, not to keep enemies out, but to keep citizens blind. That night, Congress passed an emergency vote to move forward on the Access Disclosure and Integrity Act. It didn't end everything. But it started something. The next morning, Jasmine visited a high school in Houston. The students had been watching the hearings. One girl, maybe 15, raised her hand nervously and asked, "Did it scare you, going after someone so powerful?" Jasmine paused, then knelt slightly so her voice met the girl's eye level. Power only scares people who think it can't be replaced. But democracy isn't handed down. It's held up by questions. Later that night, Jasmine returned to her office. A package was waiting on her desk. Inside, a worn, black envelope. No name. No return address. Inside was a single item, card number 001. The gold was slightly tarnished. The QR code scratched. There was no note. Only the card. Heavy, real, dangerous. She stared at it for a long time before sealing it in an evidence bag. "We don't need to destroy it," she said quietly to Malik, who stood in the doorway. "We need to show that it has no power anymore." A week later, the card was displayed in the Smithsonian, in an exhibit titled, "Democracy for Sale, The Cost of Silence." Beneath it, on a small silver plaque, were Jasmine's words. "They paid for the card, but we paid the price. Never again." In the end, there was no cinematic ending, no arrest, no exile. Trump denied all wrongdoing, his base dismissed the evidence. His campaign rebranded the scandal as Crockett's Circus. But the audits changed policy. The bill changed reporting laws. And most importantly, something shifted in the country. For the first time in a long time, people understood what influence looked like when you could touch it, weigh it, hold it in your hand. And they chose to say no. Weeks later, Jasmine stood before a joint university crowd in Chicago. Her voice was calm, firm, grounded. "They thought the gold would silence us. But gold doesn't silence. It reflects. And when you shine enough light on it, it burns through the lie." And so it ended not with applause, but with awareness. Not with a takedown, but with a line finally drawn. And on one side of that line, money, shadows, and the card that nearly rewrote American access. On the other side, truth, courage, and the people who refused to forget.